Okay. Screen share it is. 18. Here we go. So we talked a lot about an abstract one. We talked about prayer last time, and we went into quite a deep analysis of the Zohar's unique approach. We're going to do something similar after we've done something familiar. I'm going to read Ushpizin and Tikkun El Shavuot just inside the Zohar. Then, if we have time, we'll go into the question of evil, the Sitra Achra, the question of dualism, right and left, and all the things we do I absolutely have, to appease the Sitra Achra. Anyhow, Ushpizin, Rabbi Elazar Patach. Rabbi Elazar is the son of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, of course. Rabbi Elazar opens up the symposium. They're always having symposia. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his Chevra, the Chevraya. Now you will remember this line because it's a favorite on Yamim on Rosh Hashanah, and also it's a famous composition by Lewandowski. Zacharti la chesed neorayich, etc. Okay, how does it begin? Vayidei avadecha navim katuv leimor haloch vekarata ba'oznei Yerushalayim leimor. So Yirmiyahu is turning to Jerusalem. Jerusalem symbolizes the entire people of Israel. And God is saying, Zacharti lach, I remember to your credit, chesed norayich, the loving kindness of your youth, lechtech acharai bamidbar, when you went after me into the wilderness, be'eretz lo zruah, in a land which was not sown, there was no food readily available. This was Misirut Nefesh, great dedication on the part of, it says Yerushalayim in the text, but that's not what Rabbi Elazar is interested in. Haikra al Knesset Yisrael itmar. The Rabbi Elazar says that this pasuk refers to Knesset Yisrael. Now, Knesset Yisrael in the Zohar in Kabbalah means the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is the way that the Elohut, the godliness in general comprised of the Sfirot, manifests itself in this world. And the Shekhinah is Knesset Yisrael. This is the tool of the Shekhinah. And the Shekhinah works in the Malchut, in this world, in the lowest area. And what we're trying to do all the time is to bring about a union between Malchut and Tiferet. Okay? So, which is Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So Malchut is Shekhinah, Tiferet is Hakadosh Baruch Hu, and we're once again on the unifying thing, on the union with all its erotic overtones. Okay. And the Sitra Achra, of course, the evil side is trying to prevent the union. That's what the theosophy of the Zohar is all about. Hai kral kta Knesset Yisrael itmar, b'shata dahavat azla b'midbara imahon Yisrael. When the Shekhinah, which is the upper manifestation and symbol of the lower world, and the lower world is concretized, God's presence in the lower world is concretized in the people of Israel, okay? The Shekhinah made a decision to go, as it were, after the Jewish people, okay? Leaving its safe abode and coming to this world to be with Israel. And that's his chesed no'orayich. But if the midbar is what we're talking about, Zacharti chesed da anana. The chesed was performed by the Shekhinah by infusing itself into Knesset Yisrael under the sphere of chesed, which are the clouds of glory. Ananei kavod protected Bnei Israel in the wilderness. That's a symbol of the Shekhinah. Now, the clouds were in the merit of Aharon, who symbolizes chesed. Okay, so all the Sfirot, in fact, have figures in our history to which they correspond. Normally, Abraham is chesed, but in this chidush, Rabbi Elazar says you can put Aaron into chesed. Now, Aaron was responsible for the Ananei Kavod. We know that because what happened when Aaron died? Ananei Kavod disappeared. What happened when Miriam died?
The water disappeared.
The bear disappeared. And what happened when Moshe died?
He was buried.
He was buried.
Thank you. What? He disappeared. I have that suggestion on my left-hand side. The man ceased to fall. Okay? So they were. We remember Aaron, remember Miriam, but we forget Moshe. Never mind. But the Natla b'chamesh acharnin ditkashru alach v'niharu alach. Now, the Shekhinah gets the benefit of Aharon, who is Chesed, and also gets a whole bunch of others, Gvura, Tiferet, Hod, Netzach, Yisod, and Malchut, and they are all in the Ananei Kavod, and they support the Shekhinah, and therefore the verse, Zacharti la Chesed, now, all right, Lechtecha Karai Bamidbar, Veslo Zerua, gets a whole different Kabbalistic interpretation. All right, this is the Midrash. Zohar basically sets itself up as a Midrash on Tanakh. Okay. Avat klolotaich, the ishtachlu lulach, the atrulach, v'akinu lach kekala, the ta'adid takshitaha. The idea of the bride, of Israel being the bride, and then having the male part come is, of course, vital, central to the whole of Kabbalah and the Zohar in particular. So the Knesset Israel has the Shekhinah come, and the two of them together are ready to act as brides for Kadosh Baruch Hu. Of course, not God or the Ein Sof, but the sphere of the Tiferet. The Kol Kach Lama, and why did the Shekhinah get such an amazing reward? Begin Lechtecha Karai Bamidbar Be'eretz Lo Zerua, because it went on an adventure and it wasn't such a promising one. Tachazi, come and see. B'shata dabar nash yativ b'medora datzala dehemanuta. When a barnash, which is a person, yativ sits in the mador medurim, in the dwelling of the shadow of faith, which is a sukkah. On Sukkot, why do we dwell in Sukkot? According to Rashi, according to the Pshat, it's Ananei Kavod. And Rashi in Masechet Sukkah, at the very beginning, Daf Bet, says this is the Pshat. It's not because anybody can pull up a hut. Why should we pull up a hut? But Sukkot, Hoshavti et Bnei Israel, God says, I caused you to dwell. You didn't put up some makeshift hut. I gave you 7 Ananei Kavod, and 7 again is a number of the Sfirot that we in the world of Malchut can relate to. Okay? Chokhmah, Binah, and Da'at are beyond. Okay, or the Keter, Chokhmah, and Binah. All the rest we can relate to. 7 Ananei Kavod become the 7 Sfirot, and Chesed is the main one because the Ananei Kavod were in Zchut of Aharon, and Chesed is what was exhibited by the Shekhinah when it went to be with the Jewish people and to prepare for its role to bring the Jewish people and the sphere of Tiferet together. Okay, so Shchinta Parsa Gadfaha Ale. Remember, what's the word Gadfaha mean? We had that last week. Anybody remember?
What?
Gadfaha, wings. The Shekhinah spreads its wings over the camp, the Jewish people. Mila'ela, va'Avraham v'shishat tzadikaya acharnin shavyan v'durehon imeh. And Avraham and 6 other tzadikim, they join the dwelling places, the Ananei Kavod, the Sukkot of Bnei Israel. Now, you may have noticed this, but in your Machzorim, and certainly in the way that we talk about the Hakafot on Simchat Torah or on Sukkot, on the Ushpizin, we have spheres and we have biblical characters, and they are part of one conceptual whole. Amar Rabbi Abba, Avraham v'chamisha tzadikaya v'David Malka shavyin midurehon imei. So we make it into 7 because we have 5 tzadikim, and we have David, and we have Avraham. So we got the 7. Hadu dichtiv basukot teshvu shivat yamim. Shivat yamim ktiv lo b'shivat yamim. Now, again, I mean, you got to accept this. If you don't accept this, then it's a totally different ballgame. But everything can, as it were, be proven. The Shivat Yamim, the Teshvu, the Shivat Yamim Teshvu, the Shivat, you say Shivat Teshvu, the 7 will sit rather than you'll sit for 7 days. Okay? I'm not even going to start with that as the rational understanding of the text. But this is Zohar. V'lo b'shivat Yamim. So the Shivat Yamim, the Shiva are the ones who will dwell. Kegavna, da, in a similar way, ktiv ki sheshet yamim asa Hashem et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Okay, how did God create the heavens and the earth? Through the seven sfirot. That's why it says, well, yeah, you have to have the 7, which is Shabbat. But the 6 days are the sheshet yamin, not b'sheshet yamin. So the sheshet become the 6 spheres with which God created the world, and he capped it all off with Shabbat. And we're also going to have a look at Shabbat before we finish with the Zohar and read, amongst other things, the famous Kegavna, which is in Nusach Sfard, which is all about Zohar and these ideas. Okay, Ubai barnash lemechte b'chol yoma v'yoma, and a person should rejoice every day, ba'anpin nehirin, with a shiny face, b'ushpizin ilin desharyan imei, with these guests who come to sit with him. Now, the idea of ushpizin is only in the Zohar, nowhere else. Okay, this is a purely Zoharic idea. Va'amar Rabbi Abba, ktiv basukot teshu shivat yamim, says in one pasuk, you shall dwell in Sukkot. And then it says, Labatar afterwards, Kol Ezrak B'Yisrael, Yeshvu Basukot. Ah, so who are the audiences being addressed here? Who is the object of Teshvu? Who is the object of Yeshvu? Bekadmita Teshvu. First of all, we're telling people to sit. Labatar Yeshvu. And then we're also telling them to sit. Ela Kadma Leushpizi. The first one is to these mystical guests, combinations of Sfirot and biblical characters. Tinyana, the second lot, Libnei Alma, to regular people like you and me who go into our sukkah. Some of us celebrate Ushpizin. I don't know if you do. Shmuley, do you go for the Ushpizin?
Normally, yes.
Normally. Normal is not the word to use here. It is absolutely abnormal. But there we are, okay? Or I should say paranormal, all right? But it's such a nice thing, right? And why shouldn't we do it, is what most of us say. Okay, there's always a Saba here. Rav Hanuna Saba, Kad hava aye sukkah, when he went up to his sukkah, which is on the roof apparently, hava chadi, he would become very joyful. The Ka'im al pitcha de sukkah, milagav, he would stand outside the entrance to the sukkah and he would say, Nezamen l'ushpizin, let us welcome the ushpizin. Mesader petora, let us arrange a table. The Ka'im al raglohi, he would get up on his feet. Umavarech v'omer basukot teshu shivat yamim. The first teshvu is to the ushpizin. Tevu, sit down, ushpizin ilain. Hi, ushpizin. Tevu, sit down. Grab a pew, as it were. Tevu ushpize mehemanuta tevu. The guests of faith. Okay, sit. Arim yadoi v'chadi, he would lift his hands and be joyful. V'amar zakah chulkana, zakah chulkom d'Yisrael dichtiv yichelek Hashem amo. Zohar often puts this in. Happy are those who are in the know and do this, because they have a chelek tov, which is of course the Hebrew way of pronouncing Bonaparte. He was called Napoleon Chelek Tov. Chelek Tov, okay. Anyhow, zakah chulkana. Vahava yativ, then only would Rav Hamnuna sit. That's exactly what Shmuli does. All right, you welcome Ushpizin, then you sit down. Tinyana livnei alma, the second basukot yeshvu is for people. The man ditlechul kaba'ama uva'ara kadisha, one who has a portion in the holy people and the holy land. Yativ betzila dehemanuta, sits in the shade and the shadow of faith, which is this sukkah, symbol of the Anei Kavod, the kabla ushpizin, to receive guests. Lemechte b'hai alma uva alma da'ati. So your guests, in fact, are both this worldly and otherworldly. Or by lemechte lemiskene, and you have to make the poor happy, the miskenim. Okay, in the sukkah. My tama, what's the reason? And now this is a very lovely piece of Zohar, actually. Begin the chulka de inun ushpizin the zamin the miskenehu. The ushpizin that you invite, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yosef, Moshe, David, they're not going to eat your food. But who is? The poor. So they, as it were, use you as an agency for feeding the poor and making them happy. That's their chelik. Kulhu kaime. Where are we? Okay.
19.
Now somebody who sits in the shadow of faith, sits in the sukkah, v'zamin ushpizin, ilim, and who invites these ushpizin, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, etc., ilayin, the higher ones, ushpized mehemanuta, the guests of faith, v'la yahiv lon chulkahon, and he doesn't give them their portions, he doesn't feed them. Kulhu kaimim mine, they all get up. Amri, did you know that the ushpizin can leave you in disgust? Perhaps you'll be less keen. You're less keen next time on inviting them in the first place. Amri, they say, Al kilcham et lechem ra'ayin v'gomer. There's a pasuk in Mishlei that says, do not eat the bread of a miser. In other words, a miser might invite you to a meal, okay, but he really isn't sincerely concerned to give to you. He may be cringing inside, but it's the right thing to do, or your family, or he can't avoid it. So Mishlei says, you know what? Don't eat his bread. Some say because it'll give you an ayin ra, because you've got the words ayin ra there. But others just say, look, you will not feel good when you have somebody's guests and you know that your host is not really interested in having you. It's not worthwhile, and you won't enjoy your meal, and you'll probably have to have another meal afterwards because you'll lose your appetite. I mean, who wants to sit there eating when you know your host is disapproving? Okay? Ishtakach dahu petora, the takin delay, who, the lav de kuchabrichu. You're only interested as a host in your table. You're not interested in sharing it with the Shekhinah. This is Malachi, and this is perishes filth. I will smear the filth of your sacrifices actually over your face. Very harsh. Malachi is talking about the fact that, as most prophets do, he hates social injustice disguised under a veneer of frumkeit. So your Chagechem, and of course immediately we say V'lach Chagai. It's not my festivals. Who else? Where else do we have a similar drash? Yeshayahu, Perek Aleph. Chodshechem u'moadechem sana nafshi. Chodshechem, it's your Rosh Chodesh that you bring sacrifices. Moadechem, they're not Chodshai or Moadai because Ani lo uchal aven vatzara, I cannot stand. Solemn assembly, coming to Shul, to the Bet HaMikdash, sacrifices, and Aven, deceit, treachery, taking advantage of the weak and the helpless. That's the pshat. But of course, the Zohar now uses it for how you conduct your sukkah life and how hospitable you are or are not. Okay? So, that's another pasuk. V'la chagai. To to that person, b'shata de'ilinu shpize mehei menuta, kaime mi petore. What does that mean? Try to translate. Vaile, oive, okay, to the one. What's lahahu barnash?
This man.
Exactly, to that person. B'shata, at the time, de'ilein ushpizi mehei menuta kaime mi petore.
They're invited to go away.
That these guests of faith, these spiritual guests, get up from his table. Kaime kamim mi petore mea shulchan shelo. Amar Rabbi Abba Avraham kol yamoi havekaim beparashat orchin. Avraham is the paragon of hospitality. Lezimna ushpizin u'letakan lon petore, to give tables groaning with food. And remember, Rashi in fact cites Chazal, from where do we know that haknasat orchim gdola mikabalat penei hashchina. So the Zohar, of course, has already got fertile ground here. Hashta demezamnin le'ulekuli tzadikaya uleDavid malka velo ya'avin lan chulkahon. But if you don't give these ushpizin shmuli their due, which means that you have 7 poor people around your table, okay, on the last night of Sukkot, going up progressively as each ushpiz, okay, gets into the act. Avraham kayimi petore. Avraham gets up from your table and he says, Surunam me'al aolei anashim arashayim ha'ele. Said who to whom?
Moshe to the people around Datan Vaviram.
Exactly. Perfect. Parfait. Okay? Vous êtes un vrai érudit de Tanakh.
But if I remember, donc, practically, there is one main invitee, but the 6 others are apparently also with.
Yeah, you invite one special one every night, and the others come along for the treat. They, as it were, come along on his coattail.
And there is also, there are machlokas, the order. I think that there are 2 orders, no?
There are indeed 2 orders. There is the order of the Ari and the normal order of the Zohar, and different customs.
Yosef at the end of
exactly. Do you do the ushpizin?
No, my father do, the people around me, but personally I'm a spectator.
Us too, we don't do the ushpizin either, but then of course that's where we come from. However, all right, so, but this is just so that you can read the original thing in the Zohar. It's actually, this is quite nice. I mean, you know, so we have to, so all of these tzaddikim are going to turn around and give you a bad mouth you with a pasuk. Get up from these evil people. We're not going to be here because you don't have any poor people at your table in your sukkah. V'kulu salkin abatre, and they all go away. They follow Avraham out of the sukkah. Yitzchak amar ubeten rashaim techsar. If you are a rasha, then your stomach is always empty. But tzaddik said, tzaddik ochel lisboa nafsho. Tzaddikim don't need to eat much, and they always feel full because they are tzaddikim. But rashaim always want more. Okay. Yaakov amar pitcha achalta takiena. He says, if you eat your bread at a table where there's no hospitality, it's not going to do your stomach any good, and you will apparently go to the vomitarium, if I can be as delicate as I possibly can. Ushar kol tzadikaya amri, ki kol shulchanot mal'u ki tzoa beli makom, from Yeshayahu. David Malka amar va'ashlim dinoi, dichtiv vayhi kaseret hayamim, v'yigof Hashem et naval vayamot. Okay, what's the connection between not being hospitable and naval? First of all, who was naval in relation to David HaMelech?
In a vineyard.
The wife.
No, that was Nabot.
No, Nabot. Yeah.
Nabot was the
the
vineyard
husband of Abigail.
Abigail. Exactly. when
And
this was
Naval didn't want to
we
give
didn't want
only
to
the men of David. It was
exactly.
the
David
Mafia.
shalach et na'arav. David sent his young men, and they said, "We will protect you." They offered Naval
The
protection.
modern
Naval says,
protection.
I don't need your protection. I'm not going to feed you. I'm not going to look after you. Go away. And David is very angry, and he says, "Okay." He is going to go and slaughter Naval and his whole family, burn his crops, kill his cattle. Okay, this is what young warlords do. And Naval had a very clever wife called Abigail, and she understands what's happening. She quickly mounts up, goes to meet David, and in a wonderful speech, she basically tells him that the virtue of power is that you do not use it. The virtue of power is that you do not use it. She says, I know you're going to become king. You have all the ingredients. And this will be a stain on your record. And if you go now and wipe out Naval and the whole family, he's called Naval for a reason because he was a Naval, okay? But if you are going to wipe out, then you will never live this down. It will come back to haunt you, which is probably very wise, okay? And David says, okay. And she, of course, has brought a lot of food, always good, to assuage the hunger of David's men. And it says here that 10 days passed after David turns around and doesn't kill Naval, and then Naval dies. He has a heart attack, okay? These are the 10 days of tshuva, according to Chazal. There's a lot of nice stuff which actually goes on there. My Kamairi, last word on line 27, begin. We use this in modern Hebrew all the time. Lawyers certainly, it's an Aramaic Zohar term. Because the David Sha'al Naval, vit Avid le ushpiza velo ba, David asked Naval to be hospitable and Naval refused. And he didn't give David the chelek, the spiritual David. Uve'inon asara yomin de David Malka dayin alma itadan alei ha'u barnash da'ashlim lei bish yitir min Naval. The Naval pays the price for doing bad. It's the 10 days of tshuva. David is actually a king, so he's responsible for judging the world, and therefore Naval dies. Of course, Abigail then marries David, which is happy ending to the story. We can talk about that, but we shan't. Uve'inon asara yomin de David malka dayin alma itadan. Okay, right. Amar Rabbi Lazar, oraita la itrachale de barnash yatir elakama diachil. Now we have an interesting point. The Zohar says Torah would never impose upon you an obligation, even to be hospitable, if you can't afford it. So Shmuley, don't worry. It's only according to your means. And if they are modest, you don't need to push yourself. Okay, not take out a large bank loan to get all of your Ushpizin guests in every night of Sukkot.
If I remember, the
Yeah.
Gemara said on, comment il s'appelle, on Abigail, Behadi de Shuta Pilcha. But I think that it's a little negative. It's not positive, it's a little bit negative. Don't you think so?
What I said earlier was that Abigail says to David, do not do this now because you're too paziz, because it'll come back when you become king. Mm-hmm. She tells him he will become king. Then she said, then you will regret, because this will be a stain on your record. Yes, and this, I mean, it says
because she was preparing her future.
I didn't say that. I'm glad that you did. But yes, but the fact is, this is so wise. And you can see her as this very intelligent, very bright. And I mean, why she married Naval in the first place is, of course, but then a good woman marries a Naval. So what can you do? It's the way of the world. But still, it's an amazing chapter there, section, because Abigail's speech is a brilliant one. If anything is calculated to change David's mind, she pulled on the right strings in perfect timing. Okay, so my arrow is down here. Dichtiv ish kamatnat yado. It's ich kamatnat yadom. When it comes to these things, you only according to what you can. And the Hasidic stories are full of poor people. Okay, you have the secret Rebbe who hasn't yet revealed himself, comes to the town, nobody invites him home except for the poor man, okay, like Reb Zusha of Anipol. He comes to the town, he is concealing himself, he's a poor, badly dressed, not very impressive person, sits at the back. Nobody invites him except for the poor man, okay? Poor man brings him home, gives him just some crust of bread and some wine, and I mean, very little. But Reb Zusha and this poor man, they have a great time, a great Shabbos meal. Years later, when Reb Zusha of Anipol is the famous Reb Zusha, he comes back to the same town. And this time, of course, he is invited into the Bet HaMidrash in the central synagogue. He gives it Rasha, and all the rich men, all the Gvirim want to invite him. And he says, yes, you can certainly invite me, and I'm going to have my shamash send you my horse and carriage. They say, what do you mean, Rebbe? He said, look, last time I was here, nobody invited me except for the poor man. I'm going to eat with the poor man. What's the difference between last time and this time? This time I came in a horse and carriage. Clearly, all that you really are interested in is horses and carriages. So have my horse and carriage for lunch. I'm going to somebody who has a true spiritual side. So this is the poor person. Don't worry. If you are poor, you can still invite, and you shouldn't feel any inhibitions at all. But whatever the case is, nobody should say that I will actually leave my scraps for the miskene. Ela reisha de kola ushpizinhu. You should give the best of what you've got, whatever it is, to the ushpizin. V'chadi ushpizin v'ravui lan kucha berichu chadi imei. And if you give to eat and to drink to the ushpizin, then the kucha berichu, the sphere of Tiferet, joy rejoices with you. V'Avraham kari alei ash titanag al Hashem. V'Yitzchak kari alei kol kli yutzar aleich lo yutzlach, which is the haftarah for Shabbat Hagadol, the Orval Hashem. Okay, you will be protected. Everything you do will be great. Amar Rabbi Shimon, Hai David Malka, Omaro begin the Chol Zainin de Malka, V'Kravin de Malka beyadoi de David it Pakdu. Yitzchak Amar Gibor Baaretz, Yezra'o, because Yitzchak is Gvura. Hon v'osher beveito. Yaakov Amar Az yibaka kashachar orcha. Wonderful psukim. Shat tzadikaya amri v'nachacha Hashem tamid v'hisbia. Okay. Sach sachot nafshecha v'atzmotecha yachalitz v'hayita kegan rave. You'll have wonderful food, wonderful drink. You'll do well because you're hospitable. David Malka. Okay. And this is often the ending of Zohar when it goes on a speech like this. The righteous will merit this wonderful portion in this world, or the Alma Da'ati, and in the next world, kolam tzadikim begom. So, Ushpizin is purely Zoharic. It's a creation of the Zohar. It's a creative, very creative interpretation of the Torah. It reads all sorts of things into the text. And lo and behold, we have a ceremony that has been beloved by Jews for hundreds of years, okay? And what's wrong? It's nice. Kids can bring drawings of the Ushpizin into the Sukkah. You can hang them up on the walls. But you should know that this is purely Zohar. Okay? No basis in anything else. The other thing we're going to do now, another practice that we have that is also purely Zohar, is Tikkun Leil Shavuot. Nobody in the Gemara, Midrash, any even halachic source, early halachic source, Rishonim, will find anything about Tikkun Leil Shavuot. Nobody stayed up on Shavuot night. Okay, it's newfangled Zohar. Rabbi Shimon, Havayati v'la'i be'oraita. So let's read this piece of Zohar. Rabbi Shimon, as a quote, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Havi yate, of course, is to sit. What's v'la'i? La'asok. He was working hard, okay? Osek, occupied intensely in Torah. Be'leilia dekala itchabarta beba'ala. When you sit up on Shavuot night, you are in fact getting into the very this type of unification theme, almost erotic, but generally erotic in a spiritual way that pervades the Zohar. We're unifying male and female. We are unifying the Torah and Israel. We are unifying Malchut and Tiferet, Shekhinah and Hakadosh, Baruch Hu, unity of the worlds, which is necessary for it to be restored to its original primordial perfection. Detaninan kol inon chevraya di b'nei hechala dekala. We are the color side, okay? B'nei hechala, the hechalot are the mystical rooms or levels and stages through which we go in mystical education. The Chevraya is the initiates, the ones who are learning Zohar and practicing Kabbalah. It's Terichu Bahi Leilia Dekala is Damant Lemeheve Leyoma Akara Goy Chuppah Bebala. They're going to be outside the chuppah the next day when we have a union between the Torah and the Jewish people. Lemeheve Ima Kol Hahu Lailia. We have to be all night with the Torah. Ulemechte Ima b'takunaha deihi itataknat. And we have to prepare the Kala for her wedding. Lemal e b'oraita, to be osek, to deal with Torah. Torah lanviim, and then you go from the Torah to the Nevi'im, ubi Nevi'im laktuvim, and then to the Ktuvim, uvi midrashot dikrai, and then you interpret the psukim, and of course, the perfection, the end point of the preparation of the Kala is Kabbalah. Uvaraze de chukmeta begin de ilain inun tikunin dila takshita, and to provide the Kala with her jewelry and ornaments, okay, which is the wisdom of the secret law, the Kabbalah. Ve'ihi ve'ulmetaha a'alat v'kayemet al resh on. And these tikkunim are placed by the maids on the head of the Kala. V'itanak v'hu, sorry?
This is the Kala.
Yeah.
And
the Kala has maids, and we who sit up all night are providing the tikkunim, which the maids will put on the head of the Kala. Okay? And the Kala goes to the chuppah with these ornaments only. The ilin akrun b'nei chupta. And the people who've made these ornaments, that's us, who sat up all night, are called the b'nei chupta, the b'nei chuppah. V'kevan de'i'alat l'chupata, kutsha b'richu sha'il alayu. So then the Shekhinah, kutsha b'richu or tiferet is there and says, who are these guys who are coming up with you to the chuppah? But then he's told, these are the ones who've made the tikkunim, who've made these special jewels. Umavarech lan, uma'ate lan, ba'atara de Kala. And then they too receive some of the Kala's jewelry. Zakah chulkahon, happy is their portion. Again, we're full of in the Zohar of Zakah chulkahon. The initiates are happy because they've merited a special portion. V'hava Rabbi Shimon v'chulu chevraya maranin barina de'oraita. And so Rabbi Shimon and the whole chevra were learning away in a loud voice and singing and chanting. Each one was creating chidushim. And all are ecstatically joyous. Amalon Rabbi Shimon Banai, Zekah Chulkechon. Happy is your portion, or you've merited your portion. Begin de lamachar, la teul kola l'chupa ela bahadaichu. Begin de kulu de mataknin takununta bahai leila v'chadan ba Kulhu Yehon Rishimin Uchtivin Besifra de Dacharinaya. What does that mean? By the way, Zohar is always very repetitive, so you get the same thing repeated several times. What we know here, though, at the end, is that those who have helped the Kala and sat up all night with Torah, they are written down and mentioned in dispatches. Uchtivin, what's Sifra de Dachranaya?
Dachanaya, that seems Zacharim.
Zichronot.
Ah, Zichar.
Sefer HaZichronot.
In Zachar,
Yeah, exactly. Why do we call a Zachar a Zecher? Why do we call Zachar Zachar? Zachar is Zecher. Only if the male line exists will there be a memory of your family. And that's why Benot Tzlafchad had to marry into the tribe, because the Zecher, the Zachar is the Zecher of the family. The male carries the line. The woman is absorbed by whoever she marries. And then you lose the family name.
I think it was for the properties, not from the name.
The name too. The name is important. The property certainly, but it says, and they will call him Al Shem Achiv Amet. There's a Havamina that you had to call the son in a Yibum case the same name as the dead brother. We didn't do it, and we applied it merely to the Nachala. But there is a Havamina that you should have the same name. The name is important. We carry the family name. Okay, the Kucha Barichu. Today it's not such an issue. You can have a daughter, you can have a double-barreled name, right? Okay, and then you can carry both names on.
Like in Spain.
Like in Spain. The Kucha Barichu Mavarech Lan B'Shivin Birchan V'Atrin Dalma Ilah. And then we get 7 brachot. Hatak Rabbi Shimon V'Amar Hashamayim Mesaprim Kevod El. That's a mizmor we know well. Heavens declare the glory of God. Kara daha ukimnale, aval bizmana da dekala itarat lemei al chupa beyoma demachar. That verse applies to this act that we do, preparing the kala the night of Shavuot for the chuppah the next day, which is the chuppah between the Jewish people and the Torah, okay, and all of the mysticism which is loaded on to that meeting. All this is pure Zohar. Nowhere does it say anything like this. Itakata ve'itlahirat bikishuta bahade chevraya dechadan yemar kol ha'i laila ve'ihi chadat imhon. וביום דמחר כמה אוכלוסין, כמה חיילים ומשרין מתקנשין בהדה, ואיהי וכולי מחכן, וכל אחד ואחד דתקינו לה בהי ליליה. כיוון דמתחברן כחדה, since we're all coming together, we produce yichud, ואיהי חמת לבעלה, and this is the picture of the Kala looking with eyes of love to her husband. That is Hashamayim Mesaprim Kevod El. Shamayim, the Chatan, Da'a lechuppah. The heavens, which is the Chatan, come down to the chuppah, and then there is mitnarin kezohara de sapir. Mesaper does not mean to tell; it means to shine like a sapphire. Hashamayim mesaprin. When do the heavens shine with the glory of God? When the Jewish people are united with the Torah on Shavuot. And sapir, sphira, the sapir, it's all becomes part of one interpretive mechanism. Words have no linguistic or lexical meaning anymore. We all know that the sapir is to tell. Hashamayim mesaprim kevod el. U'masei adav magid harakia. The meaning of the pasuk in the psalm is clearly the sapir ulahagid, to tell. It's curious, of course, that the psalm does go on to say, Hashamayim mesaprim kevod elo maaseh yadav magid harakeh, etc. But it says also en milim. Okay, there are no words, so it's a little odd. But it means, of course, that heavens will recount the glory of God to those who can hear. V'chol haaretz yatsa kavam uviktzei tevel milehem, but en milim, we don't hear. You can only hear the heavens if you're prepared to hear them. But the Zohar takes the whole thing in a different direction entirely. Mesaper is Sphira, is the sapphire, and is the sapphire that was there on the day that the Torah was given. And okay, the Nahir v'Zahir misayfe alma vat sayfe alma, because on that day the Shekhinah shone from one end of the world to the other, and we know all the non-Jews were asked if they want to receive the Torah, and they said no, only Israel agreed. Da kavod kala dikre el diktiv ve'el zoem b'chol yom shata akri el hashta da hayilat l'chupa akri kavod. The kavod descends with the sapphire on Sinai. Akri el yikar al yikar, nihiro al nihiro, v'shlutono al shlutono, kedein ba'ushata deshamayim al chupa v'ati v'lahir la, kol inul hevraya da'atkinu la, kulhu it parashat be'shemhon tamam. Hadu dichtiv u'maseh adav magid rakeh maseh adav, ilen inul mari kaima debarit v'hadekala, ve'inul mari kaima debarit ikrul maseh adav, Kama da tamar u'masei yadav konenehu da barit kaima dechatim bebisra debar nash. And then it goes off into hints about Yisod, which is the mark made in the flesh of people.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to leave this with you if you're interested in figuring it all out. But this is just a little bit of this world. That's why I call this the world of the Zohar. It's a whole world. In order to have a good picture of the Zohar, we'd have to spend a couple of years. But then, do you really want to spend a couple of years learning this sort of stuff? I would suggest that we will change the topic fairly soon. But I want to start something very fascinating indeed. Evil. Evil in the world. Why is there evil in the world? Well, it's a problem for religion, always has been. Monotheistic religions and religions which have one God and are unity religions, Shema Yisrael Hashem Eloheinu Hashem Echad, say that God is real, okay? He exists. He is all-powerful and he is good. And evil is real. How can those four propositions cohabit? Okay, if God is all good and he's all powerful, then why does he let evil exist? But evil is real. So if evil is real, either God is not good, he has a nasty streak, or God is not all powerful and he doesn't control everything. Now, we cannot live with those three propositions. We have to find ways of getting around them. So we know the Rambam says that evil is only absence, it's a negative thing, and most of the evils are either our responsibility, or they are aspects of nature which we have to accept, like there are no elephants in Spain. It's been a major problem, theodicy, to this day. But, and this is also, of course, the way Islam and Christianity work. They also struggle with the question of evil. But there's a whole other religious tradition called the dualist one that says, actually, there is a good God and there is a bad side. Now, if we take these religious approaches, one of them is the oldest religion that we know, mid-6th century before the Common Era, 6,000 years before the Common Era, is, of course, Zoroastrianism. Zarathustra, okay, the famous prophet of Zoroastrianism, known perhaps to most of us through Nietzsche, whose famous work, essay, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. So it's very old, as I said, 6,000 years before the Common Era. It became the official religion of the Persian Empire for a while. And when Islam conquered the East, then it fell into decline. But there are still Zoroastrians alive today. Their scripture is called Mazda. I think that's the origin of the name of the car, Mazda. anyhow, but Achusa Mazda is the good God. Ormuzd, okay, who is omniscient, omnipotent, and he is benevolent, he's kind, he created the world, and material and spiritual. But there's also Amara, Nuhu, who is called Achriman. So we'll use Ormuz and Achriman. Achriman is a destructive spirit. Not quite the same as God, but Achriman is very powerful. He creates evil demons, he creates evil creatures. In fact, you divide the world in Zoroastrianism between the good and the bad. There is a domain of Ormuzd and a domain of Achriman, children of light, children of darkness, animals, plants, continents, everything you touch is either Achriman or Ormuzd, okay? And you have to tread a very narrow line, very dangerous line between the two, because there's a constant struggle. Human beings are always struggling to fight Achriman and to put Ormuz's agenda, bring it to fruition, but often they fail. In the end, of course, Ormuz's victory is guaranteed. But think about it. Everything in the world is divided up, pure and impure, right and left. Okay? The Shekhinah and the Sitra Achra. And just as some scholars would say that the Zohar represents Neoplatonism, that is the idea that there is full spirituality high above somewhere, and it becomes gradually diluted as it comes down into this world, and it's like the shadows in the cave. So there is this dualist idea around. There is God, but there's a very powerful evil spirit out there. Another later form is Gnosticism, of course, from the Greek gnosos, and all the famous Manichaeism of the early Christianity fought, okay, and went to battle with the various heretics. Good God and the demiurge, the demiurgos. Demiurgos is actually Greek for craftsman, somebody who can create a physical thing. So there is the God, there's the demiurgos, the demiurge, and they're also physical and the spiritual, always engaged in a fight. So, having said that, let's have a look, okay? Because we see something remarkable in the Zohar, which is not 10 o'clock yet. We have another 3 minutes. I'm setting the scene for next week. Tachazi, come and see. Kudsha berichu afik eser katrin itrin kadishin la'ela. God produced 10 crowns, 10 spiritual crowns, and these are the diadems, okay, and the clothing which he has provided. V'hu inun ve'inun hu. They are the way that God manifests, Kudsha Barichu manifests himself in the world. That's only Tiferet. And that is Tiferet. Tiferet is them, they are him. The rest, the whole combination of Sfirot, this is what we have in this world. Kishelhuva da'achida begomra. Now, Shelhuva is a Shalhevet da'achida, which unites, okay? And the Gomra is a coal. So what you see in this world are glowing coals, okay? Glowing coals. Now this is the whole world of the Sfirot, but it's inside something that's black, something that's very physical. But let Taman Roda. And we mustn't separate the two. Lekabel dina it lekabil dina, and parallel to the presence of all the Elohut. That is the 7 Sirot, which are placed inside like a light, inside a glowing coal. Parallel, it Eser Kitrin de la Kadishin Latata. We have in this world the Tata 10 crowns that are not holy, that are profane. The Inon Achidan Bezohama de Tufra de Chad Itra Kadisha de Ikre Chochma. Now these are the capacity to unite these does exist. They are united because they are based upon a nail, a fingernail, okay, of one of the holy diadems in the realm of Chokhmah. Now, fingernails are very important in mysticism, in Kabbalah, and Nagelwasser, for example, but I mean a lot of other things about collecting them when you cut your nails. Exactly. Those of us who are very traditional will remember being warned about not throwing away bits of nails you cut off. Hair and nails, it's a whole, everything is in the Zohar, okay? But there's a little bit of this Kedusha that gives the capacity to the Sitra Achra. And the Sitra Achra has a whole, if you like, Elohut, just as God. It has 10 spheres. Sitra Achra has 10 spheres. Da Ikrun Chochmot. And these are Chochmot. This reminds us of the Demiurgos, okay, the Gnostic idea of the craftsman. The Tana Asara Zaine Chochmot Ili Nachtu Alma. And now he actually cites a Gemara in Kiddushin, a famous Gemara that talks about 10 sources of beauty that came down to the world, and 9 were taken by Jerusalem. There's a Daf Mem Zayin Amel Bet or something in Kiddushin. It says that 10 measures of Chokhmah came into the world, and the Kulhu Ishta'avu b'Mitzrayim. And they're all taken by Egypt. Bar Michad Dispashit Ba'alma, except for one that was spread around the world. The Chulu Zainin Chershi, but they are all occult. They are spells, okay? Black magic. Inun uminaihu yadi Mitzrayim Charshin al kol bnei alma. And Egypt became the place from which spells were exported right through the world. Egypt, the home of magic, of the Khartoumim. You remember the whole scene with Moshe and the stick that turned into a serpent. Egypt is the center of magic, of the occult. From there it went to the Chaldeans, and we're almost in Harry Potter here, okay? You've got the good side and the bad side, but this is Zohar. Zohar has a totally different take. There is a real evil spirit and a real evil side out there. Just as there is God, there is the Sitra Achra, the other side. One side and the other side. But of course, the Zohar is going to have a problem because we are meant to be, after all, a unity religion, not a dualist one. So how do we bring the two things together? And do we need to placate? And do we need to give gifts from time to time, Ian, to the Sitra Achra?
Azazel.
Azazel is an excellent example. And there are going to be a few more he does. Ramban is a Kabbalist. I'm also going to go into your tefillin again. Part of your tefillin is a sop to the Sitra Achra. You didn't know that, but we will find all that out next week. And again, discover a little more of this vast world of Zohar. Okay, so we'll start with evil, and then we'll do a couple of other things. We'll also do Tfilat Kegavna. We'll do evil first, and then we'll do a little bit of other stuff, and then we'll go into Shabbat, and then we'll see how we go. I have a trip coming up, and we'll talk. But in the meantime, are there any questions? Silence reigns. Then I will bid everybody a very good night, Erev Tov, Besorot Tovot. We continue to live in interesting times, is all I'm going to say. Last night was absolutely interesting. And what will be, will be. But anyhow, I look forward to next Wednesday evening. same time, same place.